Saint Porphyrios, the prophet of our generation, Witnesses, Volume 1. Copyright 2019. For the United States of America, John Lagadinos, President and CEO, Pulse Systems, Canton, Mass. For Greece, Holy Monastery, St. Paul, the Holy Cell of Saints Theodores, Kyries, Mount Athos. Translation by Palizou Theodora. If you have met the saint and would like to share your personal narrative or other information, please contact us at 23770-23244, Holy Cell of Saints Theodores. A Brief Biography. Saint Porphyrios, named Evangelos B., was born on February 7, 1906 in Agios Ioannis, a village in Carizia province, the fourth out of 5 children of Leonidas and Eleni. The family was poor, so he never received proper education and was illiterate, working in the family's meager fields instead, or as a shepherd in the mountains. When he was 8 years old, he left Evia in order to work, initially in a coal mine, later in a grocery shop in Piraeus. When he was just 12 years old, he renounced everything and departed for Mount Athos, a place still unfamiliar to him, because he wished to follow in the footsteps of St. John Kalivitis. Divine providence led him to the hero monk Pantaleimon, elder of the hut of St. George in desolate Kafsokalivitis, where he submitted with great abnegation and diligence, with absolute and joyous obedience, and most of all with great excitement and divine love. He was tonsured at the age of 14, taking the name Nikitas, and 2 years later he received the great schema. At the age of 17, divine providence graced him with generous and rare charismata, which he maintained throughout his life. 1 year later he fell severely ill, suffering from pleuritis, and despite the toll this took on his psyche, he was forced to leave his elders and the desert behind in order to reside in the holy monastery of St. Harlambos Lukon. At the age of 20, he is tonsured Presbyterios, a priest taking the name Porphyrios, the name the world knew him by later, and 2 years later he was granted the right to act as a confessor. During this period of his life, he heard confessions from countless peoples, and his divine charisma became apparent. In 1938, he resides in the deserted monastery of St. Nicholas in Anovathia in Evia for 2 years. On the eve of World War II, on October 12, 1940, he takes on the position of ephemerios of the chapel of St. Gerasimos and the sanatorium polyclinic in Ammonia, receiving a very low salary. Because he takes on the cares of his parents and other members of his family as well, he is led to run a poultry farm and manufacture knitting goods and incense. He works tirelessly for 33 years. He loves everyone and offers spiritual and material support, saving thousands of souls. His fame starts to travel farther and farther away. Starting in 1948, he resides in an exceptionally bare shed in Touroukounivia, Attikis, and in 1955 he moves to the small monastery of St. Nicholas in Kalasia, where he will reside permanently after his retirement in 1973. From 1979 he resides in a trailer in Milesi in foul conditions, later moving to a small hut nearby, built out of cement blocks and aluminum sheets. Dozens converge there daily, looking for comfort and support, for healing from incurable diseases, and a solution to their most difficult problems. In 1981, he initiated construction for the foundation of an expansive monastic complex whose central temple was dedicated to the Transfiguration of the Savior. He moved to one of the monastery's buildings in 1984, during which year he regained ownership of the hut of St. George, the hut of his penitents, where his escort of 4 to 5 was also based. Since 1987, he was totally blind. On February 26, 1990, the foundations of the Katholikon, the main church of the Hesychasterion, his hermitage, were laid. In June 1991, having foreseen his repose, he left for Mount Athos. On November 19, 1991, according to the Athonite calendar, December 2nd, according to the new calendar. At 4:30 in the morning, at the age of 86, he relinquished his holy soul to the Lord. He was interred in a quiet, simple, and unassuming manner. In 2013, 22 years after he reposed, he was canonized as a saint, his name inscribed forever among the saints of our Orthodox Church. B. Prologue. The holy God-bearing and miracle-working Porphyrios Kafsokalivitis, founder of the holy monastery of the Transfiguration of the Savior in Milesi, was the great morning star and prophet of our generation. Through him, the presence of the Holy Spirit in our times was confirmed once again. The plethora of his virtues, his saintly way of life, his great and ample charismata, divine clairvoyance, foresight, prophetic gift, healing, distinguish him as a potent beacon of spiritual light that will guide future generations. His charismata will stay with him in all their magnitude until the end of his earthly life and will attest to his being a temple of the Holy Spirit. The number of testimonies regarding his profound prophetic charisma reveals the saint's communion with God. Christ was a friend to him because he had immediate knowledge of him. He was able to disclose his will about future events, which are for all of us unknown, dark, and impenetrable. There is no doubt that the saint progressed rapidly through the stage of catharsis and reached enlightenment, attained theosis, that is godliness, and theoria, vision of God, and perfecting. He experienced divine grace to a greater degree, and inspired by the Holy Spirit, ran to the future and foretold what was to come with a sense of responsibility in order to build up the souls of men in Christ. From the first years of his spiritual service, people called him prophet-priest. We come across prophets in the New Testament as well as in the Old. The concept of prophet is attributed also to the disciples and the fathers of the New Testament. St. Porphyrios reposed on December 2nd, 1991, according to the new calendar, the feast day of prophet Abacum, and on November 19th, according to the Athonite calendar, the feast day of prophet Avdiu. He is celebrated as a prophet himself shortly before Christmas. St. Porphyrios spoke constantly with divine love, almost exclusively about Christ. His teachings are Christocentric. He describes for us in his own words our conduct towards Christ. He is our loved one, our friend, our brother. God-knowing, God-inspired St. Porphyrios had supernatural gifts. He moved through time and space, abolishing all physical laws. He advanced outside spatial or temporal limitations, overcoming all natural boundaries. Eliminating distance, he would transport himself to the other side of the planet, to the depths of the sea, to the inside of the earth, to the chaos of the sky, the vastness of space. Everywhere. He saw everything. Footnote, in 1988, at 3 a.m. in a lowly chapel, among other things, the saint said this, recorded without his knowing. Quote, "When Christ enters man, when he enters the soul becomes changed. It lives everywhere. It lives among the stars. It lives in the spiritual world. It lives in the chaos. It lives in the universe. It lives. I do not wish to force myself. It's just that many times I live these things through God's grace without speaking about it. I'm not allowed to. Anything that I'm allowed to talk about, I do, but I can't always." To continue. Furthermore, past, present, and future unfolded before his eyes. He went centuries back in time to the age of Christ and experienced the divine events. He experienced wonders which he never revealed. He could see the history of a place, of a monastery, of an object. He saw incidences that took place centuries ago, a person's past, starting from his childhood and their future until their death. No barriers existed for the saint. All was known because he was informed by God, the all-wise, omnipotent, and omniscient. The saint probed and measured the depths of the earth, but also of the human soul. He would find underground springs, ancient graves, and all that was out of sight, buried under the surface of the earth. At the same time, he could see the most tenebrous of ruminations, passions secret and unspoken, anxieties, the confusion and the innumerable ailments of an afflicted and tortured soul. His piercing gaze saw through the soul and the body, the spirit as well as matter, diagnosing accurately and infallibly. He examined the insides of the human body with accuracy surpassing that of the most advanced medical equipment. His prayer held immense power. His touch would heal. He would bless someone with the sign of the cross from a distance, and they would be healed. He would pray, and his appeal would be fulfilled. Like a good shepherd, he altered the souls of people and brought them to repentance in order to lead them to Christ. With only a few words, he would light a godly flame in people's heart. He was not controlling. He motivated implicitly, he inspired, he ignited divine love. The course of the saint's life in its entirety is a source of amazement to all who study it, as they come across rare combinations and wonderful contrasts through which the greatness and glory of God become apparent. The saint worked since childhood to earn a living. His father was away, seeking employment in America. The family lived in poverty. He had not yet tasted the familiar warmth, the affection and fatherly love when at the age of 7 to 8, his mother sent him to work away from home in a coal mine at first, and then in grocery stores. Despite the hardships marking the beginning of his life, little Evangelos never complains. On the contrary, he gives thanks and praises to God. Studying the life of St. Ioannis Kafsokalivitis, which he read syllable by syllable, a yearning for monasticism is instantly awakened in him. He does not know what a monk or a monastery is. A small seed fell in his fertile heart and immediately sprouted and grew roots and bore fruit. From the age of 16, he was immersed in divine grace and granted rare charismata. To a child of so young an age, gifts were bestowed, in quantity and of quality such that other ascetics never attained, in spite of strenuous and long-lasting spiritual struggles. Most children of his age live without worries, impulsively, under the protection and care of their parents. The young monk Nikitas, on the contrary, sprung forth towards the light, toward the truth, toward the life, and so pleased the all-wise God that he was judged to be mature and worthy to bear the responsibility of these rare gifts without peril for himself and for the benefit of the church. The saint attended only the first year of elementary school, but learned little because the teacher got sick. On his own, spelling out the words while herding sheep is how he learned to read, nothing more. He was poor, unexceptional, illiterate, dull, and shy, in his own words. Who would expect that this child, with an education of a handful of lessons, would become the most renowned, clever, and wise of all? Who could anticipate scientists who spent their life in education and wise men of this world to pale by comparison? The saint was able to discuss specialized scientific matters and in every language. In the words of the Apostle Paul, quote, "Everything is naked and laid open before the eyes of him," end quote, Hebrews 4:13. The saint did not look down on education. On the contrary, he expressed an interest in all the sciences. His own wisdom, however, was a gift from the all-knowing God. He who is submerged in the Holy Spirit, he shares in God's knowledge. Someone asked him, "You see everything, then, elder?" And his answer, "And even if there is something I don't see, I make the sign of the cross and say, 'Enlighten me, Christ, so I can see this also.' And I see it." Witness of Mr. Emmanuel K. in this book. He would also say this, "Everything I tell you comes from the Holy Spirit. When the grace is not with me, I do not speak." In his everyday life, he is characterized neither by eloquence nor rhetorical sophistication. He talks naturally, with spontaneity, freely, without embellishment and pretension, just like the illiterate fishermen, the apostles. He had the charisma of logos and theology. He became guide, counselor, teacher, and guileless shepherd for thousands of souls, rich and poor, famous and undistinguished, educated and illiterate, in the words of the Apostle Paul, quote, God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. 1 Corinthians 1:27. The saint rejected worldly propriety. He did not partake in the norms and figures of conduct of the so-called civilized people. He was not pedantic in matters of behavior and did not conform to conventional standards. He was not a model of nice, stylish conduct. He is informal and straightforward when he addresses someone. He admits that the purpose of this is closeness. He does not adhere to the surface. He seeks out what is essential to aid the soul. His use of informal, familiar language is meant as a form of endearment, like something in standing for my good man, my good woman. He's the most genuine and authentically kind-hearted man. By all accounts, he's affectionate and kindly. He respects and loves everyone, just or sinner, with a love most sincere, pure, and sacrificial. His soul is poetic. He possesses saintly discretion and humility and immaculate love. He does not appear to be good, virtuous, holy. He is a saint. The extent of his purity was such that he attracted the divine grace. The priest-monk, so virtuous, unblemished, and clean at the age of 34 years, took up residence in the midst of corruption and dismantled the trappings of demons, leading the sinners to the path of salvation. For 33 years, he was in contact with people from the underground, prostitutes and pimps, immoral and thieving persons, degenerates and occultists, and yet he was untouched by sin. He passes judgment unto nobody. He only loves them in Christ, and helps them. He said once, quote, boys and girls come to me now and then. The poor children have done all that you could think of, every carnal sin they have committed. But I love them. End of quote. It is not the sinner he turns away from. It is the sin. The saint was a fragrant white blossom among the squalid streets of Ammonia. He came from the serenity of Mount Athos to the buzzing city of Athens, from the desert of Kafsokalivitis to the crowded Ammonia, from a holy place to a place of sin. He came to the heart, the center of Greece, to Athens. He came to the heart, the center of Athens, to Ammonia. And he came to the heart of the 20th century. His dream was to disappear, to live in obscurity, and the all-wise God, deeming him entirely worthy, revealed him to the world, made him renowned all over the world. Footnote, it is telling that he received calls from across the planet, from the Pacific, Africa, America, England, the Caribbean, and so on. St. Porphyrios, like a modern toiling Job, just and prophetic, exhibited incredible perseverance and endured without complaint many painful illnesses. He never prayed about them. He was ashamed to do so out of a sense of honor, because he felt indebted and grateful toward God. He said to others, do not pray for me to be well, pray for me to become good. Despite the grievous pain he was in, he never stopped meeting with people and comforting them. His holy body may have been suffering, but so was his godly soul, seeing the souls of people tormented by sin. He hurt in body and loved. He loved and hurt in soul. He said, quote, whoever wishes to become a Christian must first become a poet. That's it. You need to hurt, to love, to suffer for him who you love. Love means toil for the loved one. End of quote. He who gave himself over to God since he was a child thought that he doesn't love him as much as he should. He who performed signs and wonders was reflecting on the apology he would present at his time of judgment before Christ. As a true humble servant of God, he chose to die humbly as well. So unassuming, so divinely beautiful and grand was he. Like an angel on earth, he came from above, from Athos and spread his blessing, the message of Christ's love. With open hands, he traversed a course full of light and made his way back to his heavenly home where he always belonged, a citizen of heaven. We would like to express our many and honest thanks to all those who have readily submitted their personal testimonies about pivotal incidences in their lives. By sharing in their personal experiences, we strengthen our faith, receive teachings, and a living contemporary example of holiness. We deeply thank as well all those who have offered their support, spiritually and materially, for the completion and publishing of this book. May Saint Porphyrios always bless those who pray for his intercession. May he lead us in the road to salvation and bestow his plentiful grace on all of us. Amen. Signed, the Holy Cell of Saints Theodores, Kyries, Mount Athos. Prophet Saint Porphyrios, intercede for the family of John and Fotini Lagandinos and of their children. See, witnesses. The most beautiful years of my monastic life were spent there in Kafsokalivitis. 1. Persist in the right faith because difficult years are coming. Witness of the hero monk Prodromus, elder of the Holy Cell Evangelios tis Theotokou, the holy monastery of Simenopetra, Mount Athos. Judgment. I met St. Porphyrios in 1980. I met him when he lived in a trailer parked on top of cement blocks in Milesi, roughly at the current location of the monastery. I visited him many times, and naturally I gained something from him each time. At times I felt this thing intensely, this special thing I was receiving, this spiritual thing, while other times I could see his charisma of clairvoyance and foresight. What I recall from my first visits is this. He was in the trailer, and that is where I went. But outside the abode and in a small distance from it, a crowd was gathered. People waiting to see the elder, only none of them appeared to be pious. There were men and women. Some were smoking, while the women's clothing was indecent, and thoughts came to me, but what business do these women have here? What do these people want from a holy man? Until the saint's sister, Porphyria, comes out at some point, and while I was the last to arrive, she says, "Father Cherubim, come, the elder wants you." I go inside and sit. I was there for what I felt for the first time, so intensely someone in possession of a charisma of this sort, because no one knew me. I entered, and rather than pampering me, which I was expected since we had never met before, he jumped at my throat, and he tells me, "Seriously? These people here? They are in need. Who will pay attention to them? You were scandalized because of the state of their appearance? It is them that you ought to approach, and truly there are souls here that are so good." He really emphasized these last words, and the scandalizing thoughts left me. Why? Because through his sister he had just called me by name. She said, "Father Cherubim," not just Father. She said my name, and obviously it was the saint that told her, because I was the only one in Cossacks. Furthermore, he knew my thoughts, my reflections, my logismi. So what? Another experience in the trailer is the following. I went together with an abbot from Mount Athos who wanted to visit the elder, but as it was me that had urged him on, we went together. The saint was in his orchard atop a small hill, grafting wild pear trees. There were ropes threaded around his belt. He held a small scalpel and was grafting. I ran, left the abbot behind. I did a matanya, a prostration, because at this point we knew each other, and I said to him, "Elder, your blessing." "Of Christ," he answered, and stared at me for a while. The elder here is the abbot of that one monastery. So what? And he went on with the grafting of the pear tree. That is to say, he acted as if he was not interested, which I received as contempt. I felt bad because I was the one who led the abbot there. At some point, he finished the grafting of the tree, and after they'd greeted each other, he tells us, "Come, let us go sit inside the cell to talk in peace." We did just that, and he started recounting to the abbot a personal matter, a court case against the parents of some monks. He started recounting the whole case, including who helped him and who did not. He was telling him, quote, "On that one day when you were in court in that one city, it was him and him who helped you, and not the person you think," etc. Afterwards, the abbot fervently expressed his wonder, saying, "But how does he know all that? How did he tell me all these things?" The holy abbot left in peace because they conversed for a while, and a lot was revealed to him. That was the second time I saw his charisma in such potency, when nothing was unknowable for him. The Book of Repentance. Another time, to talk about the trailer house again, I had gone together with a layman from Athens. The saint received me in private and asked me something unexpected. "Hey, pray tell me, which is the ermos of Ode 6 in this mode?" I don't recall which mode he asked of me, the fourth or the plagal of the fourth. And I answered, Elder, I don't know." "You do not know?" And he continues in a raised tone, acting angrily. "And you're a chanter? How can you not know?" "It is this one." And he begins to chant to me, not only the ermos of Ode 6, but also the troparia that follow. I was listening, full of questions and awe, and in the end he added, "The Acticos, because it is the book of repentance, we must know it, cover to cover. We must know everything." To me, though, that was the answer to a thought I was having. The saint did not say it by chance. Excluding the period of the Pentecost, we read the book of the Octikos or Perikletikii throughout the year. And so I found it boring, and I had this thought that it is a tedious book. The saint answered to this thought that we ought to know the whole of the Perikletikii by heart. Quote, "It is the book of books, the book of our repentance," he would tell us. An angel. On one occasion, I was in Athens on affairs of the monastery. Briefly before that, there had been an accident during which an Athonite monk was killed. I had gone to the jewelry shop of C.H. Paparoupas at the center of Athens because I knew that the shop owner was connected to St. Porphyrios, and I asked to make a phone call to Milesi. I wanted to ask of the saint to pray on behalf of the monk that was killed, only 22 years of age. It was approaching noon, and the saint picked up the receiver. Before I had time to speak, he says to me, "Father Sisios is an angel. He left in obedience. Do not be burdened with thoughts of him, and do not feel sorry. He's in God's hands." I was astonished. I did not expect that. After a moment, he says to me, "Go on, speak. What do you want?" "Yaronda, I wish you would pray for this monk. He has no need of prayers." It is a tremendous thing to have this kind of witness from a holy man. No doubt is left in your mind. Furthermore, on a different occasion, we were discussing my parents because we were 3 brothers, all monks, and the saint said to me, "Your big brother has all that is good in your father." And he spoke to me about my father's character. Indeed, my big brother is, as far as his character is concerned, identical to my father. Because my father was very pious and visited monasteries, it occurred to me that maybe it had slipped from my attention and he had come here to the saint while I was in Mount Athos. So I asked, "Elder, do you know my father?" "What kind of question is that? Of course I know him." "Did he come here? Is that how?" "Ah, I see. I don't know if he came." I was astounded that he knew my father so well through different means. Beware, you will face battles. The late abbot of the holy monastery of Perikletos, Father Cherubim, coincidentally my first confessor, would often ask me, "Hey, don't you have logismi, reflections? Don't you have temptations?" "No, Yaronda, I do not." "Do you perhaps wish to see your family?" "No, Elder." "Be mindful, they will come. There is no way. Sometime the temptations will come. Now you are in times of peace, so pray for the difficult days yet to come." St. Porphyrios said to me one day, "You will go through many struggles. You will be tested greatly, but know this, ultimately it is God's will." The saint recounted things that ended up happening after 25 years of monastic life and which were significant. I remember him saying, "Be careful, you will face battles," at a point when my monastic life was clear running water, free of temptation. I did not particularly heed these words then, and when they came true in hindsight, I remembered that I will face battles, hardships, etc. Moreover, all that took place almost after 25 years, the saint had prophesied it. In Kafsokalivia. Whenever I visited him, he always had a story to share from Kafsokalivia, a place which was dear to him. He wanted to emphasize the matter of obedience. An incident remains in my memory. When he was a subordinate, the elders sent him to the holy monastery of Agio Lavra to carry back 2 sacks of chestnuts. He would tell me, "I was carrying the 2 sacks on my back and I crossed the Serra, that is, the unwelcoming and unstable slope with rocks and gravel. It is dangerous and difficult to cross. And it felt like I was lifting, like they were full of leaves instead of chestnuts." He also told me the story of the first time he himself realized that God had gifted him something, meaning, of course, the charisma of clairvoyance. He told me that he does not always have it. He told me the following, quote, "It was late, and I did not know whether I should read the Vesper or not. I went outside and sat there on a ledge, and then I saw my elders sitting on a boulder, even though they were not in sight, and reciting the text of the Vesper. As soon as they returned there to the hut, the elder says to me, 'Nikitas, did you read? What did you do?' 'But you also read the Vesper. You sat there on the rocks and recited. I saw you, that is why I went ahead and read it.' Then my elder hesitated a bit and understood that I have something." He continues, "My elders used to leave to work on some fields we owned, leaving me in the cell alone. We had a few big books on a high shelf full of dust. It was the Philokalia, and I had the order not to open one of them. I picked up that one to read. Oh my goodness, what a book that was! Written by hand. I closed it and put it back in its place. The time of the Vesper arrives and they say to me, 'Read, Nikitas, the 9th hour.' I go to the book and see blank pages. I could not read anything. Everything in front of my eyes was white. I could not see the letters. The next day I managed to tell my most senior elder, and afterwards I was able to read as usual again. I went through my canona and paid for my disobedience." And he told me all that with such an appreciation about the matter of obedience. He would always relate something to me about Kafsokalivia and about his strict elders, whom he loved a lot and submitted to with joy. He would say, "The most beautiful years of my monastic life were spent there, in Kafsokalivia." He would also express his desire to repose there. He would say, "I wish God will deem me worthy of resting there." And of course, God fulfilled his wish. Regarding faith. I will also mention my last visit when he lived more to the north, in a cell of the monastery that was under construction at the time. I went to see him. His hands were wrapped in cloth, and on his eye he had some kind of compress. This is the image in my memory. I say to him, "Elder, what should I be mindful of?" At the same time, I held his hands lightly to get his blessing. "No, there's no need." "Elder, what should I do to be mindful of in my life?" "What you Athenites should attend to more is the matter of faith. Preserve the faith right and unscathed, because difficult years are coming. Safeguard the faith, you especially that are in Mount Athos. The people look to you." That is what he said to me, and it was engraved in my mind. Then I asked him about some nuns I knew, and unfortunately what he told me then came true recently, after all these years. He said to me, "There's a lot of selfishness. They will not prosper." And in the end, the escort of this female Hesychasterion dispersed 25 years later. Daniel Gouvalis. 2 very noteworthy spiritual men who along with Father Photius, experienced the saint more intimately than others were Father Daniel Gouvalis and Father Christodoulos, the catechumen of the holy monastery of Simeon the new theologian. Those three respected and loved the saint very much, and the saint felt the same towards them. Father Christodoulos was the vicar in Milesi and built the monastery under the direction of St. Porphyrios. As a matter of fact, he had provided guidance on the exact location of the new monastery's foundation. Father Daniel Gouvalis resided in Malakasa on the saint's order because a Chiliast group had been active there. Father Daniel specialized and became proficient in this matter of heresy. He put himself under a canona and would learn by heart whole excerpts from St. Simon the new theologian. I would hold the book and he recited back to me. Afterward, he would stand me up on a chair and ask me to recite them by heart. He was also an ascetic. I entered his cell once due to the freeness between us, because he allowed entrance to no one, and books were strewn about everywhere. Only a small spot on his bed was bare, and when I sat there I understood that he had placed something underneath it to make it uncomfortable. He was very humble and hard-working. With self-sacrifice and great fervor, he toiled and helped many people that were in danger of drifting to heresy. May we have the blessings of these virtuous elders and the intercession of St. Porphyrios. 2. I will make sure you get home. Witness of Mrs. Vasiliki Karava, Pizza, Corinthia. Gardening knowledge. We'd been dealing with a personal issue, and my husband, Spiridon, went to Milesi to find and talk with St. Porphyrios. When he arrived, however, it was already dark, and a lady informed him that it was too late. He would not be able to meet the elder. So he decided to spend the night right there on a ledge in order to meet him the next day. After a while, the same lady came back and said to him, "The elder called me and said to me, 'The man sitting outside on the ledge, go now and bring him up to me. Come with me.' He went inside the elder's cell, received his blessing, and sat down. The saint started telling all about my husband's life. First, he described our village in detail. Then he talked about our lands. Regarding one of the fields, he said that there was a lot of water underneath, and indeed years later we found it. He described our house as well and spoke of our children. At some point he said to him, 'Your eldest daughter wears a hat and is a tomboy. That daughter is a railroad station master.' At the time, my husband was a tailor, beekeeper, and had a tree nursery. He was very active and hard-working. The tree nursery was large, with olive trees, sour trees, that is orange, lemon, tangerine trees, etc., peach and apricot trees. We had in total about 18,000 trees. The saint happily told him a lot about our work. He was knowledgeable in agriculture. He started talking in detail, step by step, about the work we were doing, how we would start with the seeds, how we would transplant when the plants were grown, and finally how we would graft the trees after 1 year. Because during the previous years we had no success grafting the bitter orange trees, the saint said to him, "Don't worry about your bitter orange trees. Your plants will do well. They will thrive." It was unbelievable because in that year not one plant was lost. All of them thrived. In the following years as well, very few were lost. After a long conversation, the elder gave him his blessing and said to him, "You go now, and I'll make sure that tonight you reach home." My husband left, and when he reached the main road, even though it was late at night, someone stopped and drove him to the bus station in Kifzios. There was bus correspondence from there, and so he came to Corinth. When he got off the bus, a different driver stopped on his own, picked him up, and brought him to the village on the same night. Until this day, we do not own a car. We use public transportation. While the saint was alive, my husband visited him one more time. While he reposed, we visited the monastery many times together. We always used public transportation and always came back in a miraculous manner. We made no signal, but the right car stopped next to us and the driver offered to transport us to the bus station. It was impressive because it happened every time. It was constant care on the part of the saint about our transportation. During that first visit, my husband had gone with the sole purpose to speak with him about a problem we had, but he did not manage. Fascinated by the saint's revelations, he just forgot. He returned home and our problem was solved. It is certain that the saint knew about it. He came in a dream. The second time my husband visited with a family friend whose nephew was born with a serious health condition, but the saint was heavily ill. They only got his blessing and left. The father of that child, Mr. Demetrius, was distressed, and on the same night the saint presented himself in his sleep and repeated 3 times emphatically these words: "Demetrius, do not waste your money on doctors. The child will remain as is." Indeed, until this day, his situation has not changed. 2. I carried in me a grievance that I had not been able to visit the saint along with Spiridon to take his blessing. On top of my many responsibilities, I also had to take care of my bedridden mother. I had been impressed by the wondrous things I had heard from my husband, and I would have liked to have gone to ask him, "Elder, what must I do for the salvation of my soul?" One night I saw in my sleep that I went to a monastery and entered a little cell. On the bed sat an elder wearing fine gauze vestments. He had a glow about him. I got his blessing, and his hand was like velvet. In his left hand he held an icon of the Panagia with Christ in her arms. With his right hand he pointed to the Virgin Mary, saying, "In order to be saved, take her and put her in the book of your life." I did not realize then who the elder was. However, a few years later, when we went to Milesi for the celebration of the Lord's Transfiguration, I saw that the monastery was identical to the one in my dream. They had us sleep in the cell adjacent to the saints, and during the night I had the same dream, with the saint providing me with the answer to one more personal question. I was assured then that this elder was Saint Porphyrios. 3. They are possessed. Witness of hieromonk Athanasios Mytileneos, the abbot of the holy monastery of Komenu Stomio Larissa. Spiritual discernment is truly a gift from the Holy Spirit. This spiritual discernment is extremely difficult, to be able to discern whether a man is possessed. At times people appear normal, they appear regular, fine, and it could be said of them, "He is possessed." It made an impression on me, such an impression. I sent a family to an ascetic residing in Attica called Father Porphyrios. Perhaps you've heard of him because he has the charisma not only of discernment, but also of vision. He can see. I sent to him a family, a couple to be exact, accompanied by one of their children, even though they have more, about a very serious matter. I had already discerned serious symptoms of possession in the child. They were obvious, though. Even you would be able to see those. I sent them, and they went. Father Porphyrios called me and left me in shock. A footnote, Father Athanasios would contact St. Porphyrios from time to time by phone for advice on spiritual matters, but the saint would also contact him. He said to me, "You tell them I did not tell them that also their other child, the second child, it is possessed as well, a little girl, 15 years old. Also, the parents are possessed. But Yeronda, these people go to confession, they take communion." St. Porphyrios says, "Listen to what I say. They are possessed." Footnote, a spiritual child of Father Athanasios Mytileneos reveals that during a private conversation, Father Athanasios told him that this couple became possessed on account of their big, in quote, religious egoism. To continue, he insisted a third and fourth time. I told them, of course, because he told me to, he asked it of me. The couple was shocked. Not a long time passed, and indeed the girl manifested a particularly grave sin, and she persists in this grave sin, which shows that she has had the demon corresponding to this sin. I was struck. I could not see it. He could. He could see many other wondrous things. This is called spiritual discernment and vision. He could see from afar, without coming into contact with someone. It's a very rare gift, especially for our age. For a modern-day prophet, witness of Alexandros K., Athens. Strange visitor. My father was a car mechanic, and my grandfather, Father Panagiotis, had St. Nectarios as a teacher in Rosario School. I was not a good Christian because I had no active religious life. I did believe in God, however, and had my principles. I always remember and try to abide by the words of my grandfather the priest. Do not do unto others what you yourself hate. Meaning, I should not do to others what I do not want to be done to me, but, on the contrary, do what I would want to be done to me. In 1964, I bought 3 acres of land adjacent to the Athens-Lamia National Road. On an area of 2 acres, I built a car repair shop and a gas station. Right next to them, I built a combined grocery and baked goods shop. In front of it, there was ample parking space. I also put tables there for the customers. Behind and next to all that, on the remaining acre, I built my house. I would wake up early in the morning and bake 6 batches of bread. With my wife, we worked from morning till night every day, even on Sundays, because we were getting a lot of customers. Thus, our whole life was totally devoted to running this shop. When the time was nearing for our children to go to school in the summer of 1976 or 77, we decided with my wife, Asaminia, to sell the house and part of the site. We intended to buy a different place closer on to the school. One morning, a customer who heard us discussing this matter showed interest and told us that he knew one Elder Porphyrios living in the mountain. He told us that he was sick and cold and he might want to buy from us. When I told him I have immediate need of the money, he says to me, "He is saintly, and if he likes it, the money will be found immediately. Do not worry about that." He promised to return with an answer in a few days. That was Mr. Petros, who, as I later learned, was helping Elder Porphyrios up there in Cilicia. Clients would ask about this elder from time to time, and we would provide directions. We did not pay special attention to that because we were absorbed in our work. 1 month later, approximately at 10 in the morning, I was sitting outside the shop and gazing at the mountains across from me, thinking about Mr. Petros. My thought was that this monk ought to, at the very least, come and make it clear where he stands, because I could no longer wait for him. No sooner than I turned my back to enter the shop, my wife, Asaminia, called to me and said there was a monk outside. He was a monk of about 35 years old, wearing a dusty raso with a knitted wool hat. Because I saw no car stopping, I asked him how he got there, and he pointed to the fields and the mountains across, saying, "From there." His beard was black, and I thought he was probably an acquaintance of Elder Porphyrios or one of his young monks. He immediately said to me, "I saw it, and it's no good for me." I protested, "How do you know that? When did you see it? Why wouldn't it be good for you?" "It's good, 4 acres, counting the house." "Well, I want to make a big church, really big, like the one for Panagia in Tinos, and many people from all over the world will come for pilgrimage. It will be visible from anywhere, a lighthouse seen from around the world." I was looking at him thinking he must be a megalomaniac. Fine, you won't find a site like that around here. Don't you know that the Emiliano orphanage is not selling anything? The entire area there was the property of that orphanage, so I told him that, trying to make him change his mind. "Your house will not be sold," he said, but I paid no attention to his words. Searching for good water. It occurred to me then to talk to him about the water. I had attempted drilling for it, but there was not enough water. Only 10 square meters for every hour. So the Ministry of Agriculture shut it down, and I had to convert the spot to a well 20 meters deep. Animated, I said, I also have really good water. Where is it? Hey, look, the well is over there, and I pointed it out to him. The monk was staring at the well and moving his lips like we do when tasting something. He answers, well, it is contaminated. I objected fervently. There's no way. How would you know that? The health inspector comes here every few months and takes a sample for testing. It is mandatory since so many people pass through here and drink from the water. He was looking at the site and the land as if he could see underground. And he went on. You throw the motor oil there after you change it in that pit, and from there it ends up in your well. What do you have there? Is it a toilet for the customers? Those end up in the well also. That cannot be happening. Whoever sold you the site had many pipes underneath, and all these are connected to each other. He was speaking naturally and with confidence. There was no doubt in his words, so I asked him, where am I going to find water now that I need it? He glanced around briefly and answered, right there. There's an oak tree next to the pine tree. At that spot, there's clean water. How do you know there's an oak tree there? I see it. I was puzzled because the pine tree was far away from us and the oak tree looked as big as a radish. It was absolutely impossible for him to see it at that distance. I knew that an oak tree grew there, but how could he see it? Following that, he said to me, there is water elsewhere as well, closer and of better quality, underneath the foundations of the shop, at that spot there between the two mulberry trees. What? Dig around in the foundation and ruin my shop? No, that's nonsense. Here, dig 2 meters to the side, right between the mulberry trees. Ah, the pigs go there, I see. How do you know that? Well, I smelled it. He turned his gaze to a different direction and continued. Right by that pole with the cable, it was a telecommunications pole. Drill right there, because there is water of great quality there. Is there any further up? There is. But you drill near the pole. It is a natural mineral water. Then he began demonstrating with gestures how the water flows underground. Expropriation. His tone was very convincing and left no room for doubt. Overjoyed, I said to the monk, great, I will bottle it. No, you will not open a bottling facility yourself. Someone else will with his own water, but he will have no customers. 2 cars will leave daily and he will have to sell to someone else. This man, because he will have a lot of work, will want to take your water as well, and he will name it so-and-so, and name left out for obvious reasons. Almost across from my store, there was a paint manufacturing facility carrying the same name as the one the monk mentioned. So I asked him if that's the place, but he answered negatively. I was not satisfied and full of questions. So I asked him, and why shouldn't I start a bottling company? Because the road will have your shop. It will be expropriated, and that will be their excuse, what you see outside that factory. And he pointed to it with his hand. They will make my shop, they will take my shop from me over that little shrine. By the time that I'm talking about, the shrine will be a chapel, and they will use that to close your shop. They will think that if they open a bigger shop and close yours, their clientele will grow as well. Here, the tarmac will pass through here where I stand now. Well, if that's the case, what do I want with the shop? What use is there? Let them take it and I will collect my compensation. No, they will not bring your store down. They just want you to be out of business. I became upset at that because I had invested all my money and my dreams in that store. I asked him, what will I do with the equipment I have bought? It is German-made machinery, really expensive. I've invested a ton of money in this place. All this will happen years later. Everything you own, you will sell and get your money back. 2 things, however, you will give away. Why would I give them away? The monk laughed and answered, they will not offer enough money for them. They will want to buy them cheap and you will not budge. Well, in the end, you'll prefer to give them as a gift. And who will I give them to? He was looking at me with his blue eyes. He looked so calm and certain. With a smile, he answered, you will give them to me. And what will I give you? Hey, listen here. Years later, you will buy a spacious, nice fridge. It will be expensive. You will love it and touch it in amazement. And, well, that and one more thing you will gift to me. Anything he told me, I immediately inquired after. Why this? Why that? And he responded, everything seemed improbable and strange, but I began to believe it. I asked him in distress, so that will be all for my shop? Yes, it will go to waste. Is there nothing I can do to salvage it? If you build a chapel on the grounds, you will avoid the expropriation and you will still lose your customers. I remembered at that moment that the mayor had proposed to me to build a chapel on my land because many accidents happened in front of the store. In addition to that, the place saw a lot of traffic and all those people would be able to light a candle. I had refused because I would have lost part of my grounds for good. It was improbable that I would ever build it myself, as I had invested everything in the shop. I asked him, and if all this comes true, what will become of me? What will I do for money? I have 3 children to raise. He looked compassionate. Many things will happen. Great unhappiness will befall the people, and they will go hungry. Those who eat bread and olives, don't fear for them, because God will care for them. The spoiled ones, however, will suffer. At that moment, I thought that even though we had plenty, because I had grown up poor and hungry, I enjoyed eating bread with olives. Even earlier, when I had time to go fishing, I carried in my pocket olives. I would eat them to keep from getting lightheaded. Panagia. Afterwards, he said to me, there are some people who say, Mother of God, well, Panagia, Panagia. I say that too all the time. Should I stop? Is it wrong? Is it tiresome for her? No, do not stop because she likes it, pleases her. Call for her as much as you can. Fine, but everyone says the same. Panagia, Panagia. Does she have time to attend to it all? For the first time, I saw him look at me strictly, and he answered solemnly, I do not know how it happens, but I know it very well that she does make time for everyone. Everyone. Years later, I understood that the monk did not mention the Virgin Mary by chance. Rather, he knew that I call upon her often. In front of my store, which was right on the national road, many accidents happened because there was no median barrier. I remember rushing outside every time I heard loud brakes or the sound of a car crash, shouting, Panagia, Theotoke. One day there was a big collision of 8 cars and I was calling for the Virgin Mary. Nobody was killed. Another time, right in front of the shop again, a car was cut in half due to speeding. I ran and found the driver badly injured, covered in blood and pain, cursing God. I felt sorry, kept repeating in grief, Virgin Mary, forgive him. Mother of God, forgive him, until the ambulance came. I heard afterward that he recuperated completely. Yet another time, upon returning from the bank, one morning I found my employee, whom I had taken out of an orphanage, weeping. He says to me, 2 people fell in the creek in their car and they were killed. If you had been here, you would have called to the Virgin Mary and they would have been saved. About my family. His presence felt comfortable and familiar, so I thought to ask him about the future of my family. See what he had to say. My kids are growing up and I begin to worry about their life. the Hierode, do not fear. And about your eldest girl, she will be a model child. I was anxious about this daughter because she would not listen to us at all. She was mischievous and unruly. As an example, she would open the packets of Turkish Delight one by one, tasting one piece from each, leaving them all unsellable. When she was grown up, she started working at a bar. I would have kicked her out, but I did not even hold any hard feelings in the end, because I remembered the monk's words. They were big support, these words. Indeed, the monk was validated because later my daughter started studying diligently, got a degree in biomedicine, and became a responsible and respectable professional. She is nothing like that undisciplined and rebellious girl. This particular discussion with the monk was etched in my memory because it was my first time experiencing something like that, and it made a huge impression on me. Later, I sat down and recorded everything that I had remembered to preserve it. At some point, he said to me, "You know, a small nightingale has come to my place, and it sings to me with its beautiful voice and keeps me company. I have one as well. It comes to the water tank to drink. Could it be yours?" "Nah. How much water does a little nightingale need?" At that moment, my mother called to me from the store's entrance, and I turned around to answer, but I also saw the monk out of the edge of my eye. In those few seconds, the monk disappeared. I was surprised because we were in an open space and I would have seen him walk away. I looked around for a bit, then I asked my mother, "Wasn't a monk just here now?" "Yes." "Where did he go?" "I do not know." I called to my wife as well. I asked her, Was I not talking to a monk here just now?" "Yes." "Where did he go?" "I do not know." I sat on a chair for a long time, baffled and immersed in thought, until some customers interrupted me. Then I remembered that it was rush hour and many cars should have stopped either to refuel or to pick something up, bread, cigarettes, and the like. And yet, in the time I spent talking to the monk, not one customer had come to ask for something. Now the store was brimming. I also realized that for the duration of our talk, he stood at a distance from me, at least 2 to 3 meters, and I never came closer to him. Realization of prophecies. On the very next day, I took a water sample from the well and brought it to an acquaintance's lab to get it checked. Their answer left me dumbstruck. "This is sewage. It's not even fit for washing dishes, and you drink from it? Don't tell us you also give it to your children." And we had been giving it to people to drink. In 3 days, I brought a drill and drilled right where the monk had indicated, next to the telecommunications column. At a depth of 60 meters, we found great water. It was good in quantity, 30 square meters per hour, and quality. Once again, the monk had been right, but I hung on to my hopes about my dream. I wanted to start a bottling business with my water, the adequacy of which was guaranteed in writing by the responsible service. I did not go ahead with that plan, however, for 2 reasons. First, the cost was too high, and second, it would be necessary to close the gas station, and I made a significant profit off that. We also postponed selling the house, which, just like the monk had foretold, was, after all, never sold. Little by little, we started hearing from customers about Elder Porphyrios, who had come near us in Milesi. His hut was 10 minutes by car, and we often directed people how to find it, but ourselves, because we were fully devoted to our work, we did not make up our minds to go see him. Besides, we had no motive to go to the monastery, which was under construction at the time. No matter who we asked about the middle-aged monk that had visited us, no one knew him. They told us that Elder Porphyrios did not have such a monk in his monastery. He nullified the monoclones. In October 1990, a doctor from Piraeus took a sample for a biopsy, because recently I had been finding blood in my stool. Later, during an examination at the hospital, Mr. E., the professor of medicine, diagnosed me with an aggressive metastatic cancer of the large intestines. I was not in any pain, but the cancer was working inside of me. Immediately, I was hospitalized and had surgery. A month later, I started the chemotherapy treatment, which would last for 6 months. I would go through 8 cycles, with 4 sessions per cycle. Each time, 1 kilo of frozen medicine entered my blood, and I felt as if I was descending into a grave. After each chemo session, I felt 1 year older. During this period, I had plenty of CT and MRI scans. At the end of each cycle, I had a blood test done to check the cancer indicators, the number of monoclonal antibodies, which unfortunately kept increasing. This meant that the body was putting up defenses against the spreading cancer. After 6 chemotherapy cycles and a lot of hardship, I was in a desperate state. I was a mess, emotionally and physically, because I had no hope of being cured. One morning, Mr. Petros came by the shop, and seeing as we looked desperate, he offered to help us. When we opened up to him, he suggested, "Why don't you come to the elder? Come, get his blessing since you are ill. Come, because he's departing from Athos. Come, you can still meet him." He had asked for a yogurt, but left before we had time to give it to him. A strand of hope grew in us, and we started immediately toward the monastery. It was our first time going there, even though it was next to us. The entrance was open. We entered, knocked 3 times, and then sat on the wooden benches we had donated in the past. We waited for half an hour before we got up, saddened, and left. No sooner had we reached the shop than Mr. Petros came after us again and insisted that we go back. He instructed us not to knock on the door, to just wait, and they would let us in soon. Indeed, the moment we arrived, Sister Porphyria opened the door and said to us, "Come, you too, that want to see the elder. He's waiting for you." The elder was laying in his bed, his eyes completely unfocused. As soon as I saw him, I thought, "He looks awful. Why did I come? Just to disturb him? What can he do for me? He is asphatic." Sister Porphyria interrupted my train of thought. "What exactly are you here for?" I was startled. I was at a loss for words. Can I ask him to heal me when he himself is barely holding on? I stumbled over my words and ended up saying, "His blessing is what we want." Sister Porphyria approached the bed, and I went beside the window. Surprised, I saw that you could see my shop from there. I felt desolate. I was leaving life. I was saying goodbye to my shop. I was saying goodbye to my life. I felt like a man sentenced to death, deprived of his last hope. Standing up there, looking down at my shop, it was as if I was leaving for the heavens, leaving this world. Despair. The elder whispered something to the nun, and she told us. The elder said, "Not to worry, you will be healed, and your eldest daughter will become an admirable child." I believed none of what I heard. I thought, what is this then? Do all monks say the same things? What the monk that came to my shop told me about my daughter, he tells me the same now. It is a collective effort. How to comfort people? I see at that moment the elder lift himself up and sit upright in his bed. With eyes wide open, he looked into mine and smiled at me. He said something in a whisper which I did not catch, and then lied down like before. A strange tremor passed through my body because everyone had said to me that he is blind, but also for another hazy reason which I could at the moment not define. My wife was by the door silently praying for me. The moment the elder sat up, she felt relieved. We kissed his right hand and left. Due to the chemotherapy, I felt dizziness, but all that transpired and left me agitated and troubled as well. There were 2 more chemotherapy cycles to be done, but the CT and the MRI could not find the cancer. Everything was clean. My monoclonal antibodies were better than anyone's. They were non-existent, like in an infant's organism. I think that in the instant those strange tremors overcame my body in his cell, I was then healed of the cancer. An oncologist working at
Matakas Hospital, an old classmate of my wife's, astonished upon seeing the new results, said to her, "Impossible. What did you do to him? What did you feed him? Have you found the cure for cancer?" I had sent the previous test to doctors in America, and they were of the same mind about the new chemotherapy treatments we were planning. Well, I lit a candle, and he got the blessing of an elder. It is the first thing we must do after all. From the hospital, we did not go home. We went to the monastery and venerated the saint's cell. We were there all those years, so very close to him, and yet we only saw him on the last day before he went to Mount Athos. He seemed so sickly, so weak, and yet he healed me of such a powerful illness. The miracle, it shook us to the core, and we began a new life. We wanted to become true Christians and know Jesus Christ better. We started going to the monastery very often. We had a holy man right next to us, and we did not know. We wanted to learn everything about him. Later, we heard that he reposed in Mount Athos and was buried there. Many months had passed when, leaving the saint's cell, we saw an area outside where books were being sold. A little book with a picture of the saint on the cover drew our attention. It was about his life and miracles. Flicking through the first pages, we came across an extraordinary revelation. The picture of the middle-aged monk that had come to our shop. We slowly realized that the monk and Elder Porphyrios were one and the same. It was a shocking thing. We also remembered those words, "Your eldest daughter will become an admirable child." We bought the book and left for the shop. There we immediately started reading, but could not find the picture. On that page there was now Elder Porphyrios with his white beard. We went back to the monastery and started looking through the books until a nun, noticing us, offered to help. We told her that as we were paying, we picked up a different book by mistake, and that we are looking for the one where the elder has a black beard. She responded that there is no such book. Realization of other prophecies. Approximately 3 years later, in 1995, we were informed of the reconstruction of the National Road and the planned widening. The new road outline passed right in front of my shop's building. They took up all the space in front of me, exactly like the modern prophet, St. Porphyrios, had told me. There was nothing I could do to avoid the expropriation. Most importantly, soon I would be prohibited by law from direct access to the National Road. As a consequence, I would soon lose all my customers. So I decided to sell my equipment. I put an ad, and on the next day, I started selling. Because of the inflation, I got a great price for everything after only a few days. Nobody was interested, however, in a display case and a new fridge, which I was particularly fond of. I opted to give them away instead of selling them so cheap. Mr. Gorgos from the monastery came by, and we arranged to have them transported there. Everything that the saint said to me, I saw it come true as the time passed. Shortly after, we were not accessible via the National Road and closed the gas station. I moved and left the place. Soon, everything became deserted. In the meantime, a bottling facility had opened, but the business was not good, so it closed. The next person to take on the business had many customers and still does. Up to this day, he has been asking for the water from my drill site, but I refuse. It is a dreadful thing to know the future and be powerless to change it. All the prophecies of St. Porphyrios had come true to the letter. 20 whole years had passed since he said them to me. His memory was a great comfort to me in those tough days when I lost all my property. We had not been leading a spiritual life and did not know much about the church. I did not know what the charisma of clairvoyance or foresight was. With the saint's help, through my illness and this mishap, we learned a lot, came closer to God. All these, with the saints' prayers, were gifts of the love of God. I feel great responsibility about my future, and that I owe a lot to the saint, because he helped me a lot, and for the many wondrous things he did in my life. He is truly a great saint. May we have his blessings. 5. He turned me inside out. Witness of Father Aristides Koukios, priest, Athens. I used to be the vicar in the Church of St. Gerasimos in the Polyclinic in Athens from 1973 to 1988. I took over from St. Porphyrios, who left in 1973, although he had already retired at the age of 67. He moved in at the small monastery of St. Nicholas in Cilicia, but he would still come to St. Gerasimos from time to time to venerate the saint and to meet his spiritual children. I remember the first time we met. He took me aside and turned me inside out. First, he asked me about my place of origin, and I answered I was from Neohori, a province near Zaharo in the municipality of Ilia. That is where I went to secondary school, and I remained until the age of 29, when I was tonsured priest. The saint began accurately describing the village to me, and I had trouble remembering it. Then he talked about the village Petra, near Antresina, namely my first parish where I served for 3 years, and following that, about the village of Kyries near Keparisia in the municipality of Arcadia, which was my second parish. He was recounting my past and describing the villages, which I had almost forgotten myself. About Kyries, I remember him saying, quote, "There is a high-rise above the village. There is a low mountain there with an underground tunnel. Do you know the tunnel? Remember it?" For 10 whole years I had lived in that village, and I had forgotten about it. At some point I recalled the villagers mentioning it to me. He went on, "That tunnel was opened with the effort of the villagers in the years of the Turkish occupation to reach the river below," referring to the river Nida, escaping detection from the Turks. I was impressed by the descriptions and the natural manner of his speech. He spoke with accuracy and certainty about each thing, as if he was seeing it in front of him at that moment. I understood profoundly that he was not just a rare personality, but a holy man. I had never before met someone that incited in me as much awe and respect toward his person as St. Porphyrios did. During one of his visits, when I was kind of immersed in thought, he said to me, "Your presbytera is hurting here," and with his hand touched a point on my left scapula. I objected that the pain is on the right side, but he said with certainty, "Listen, the pain is right here. It is a lipoma." And he touched me on the same spot again. Nearly every day lately, I and the presbyter had been contemplating this pain, and I would check the tumor, the lipoma, because we feared it was some kind of cancer. However, when I went home, it turned out that the saint had been right. The lipoma was on the left side, exactly on the spot where he had indicated. He also said this, which put my mind to ease. "It's nothing. A lipoma, and you do not have to worry about it. A lipoma, it also grows in chickens. Do not mess with it. Leave it be and do not fear." Our fears were lifted, and with them the presbytera's pain. As for the benign tumor, it is in her body to this day. Another time, a doctor of the hospital said that they had some land and they were considered drilling there. The saint disagreed, however, claiming that the altitude was too low to find water. Furthermore, he advised her to drill at a higher point. It was proven, of course, that the saint, with the grace of God, was infallible. Every time the saint visited St. Gerasimos, the presbyter took his blessing and then left us alone to converse. He was truly humble and simple in everything. He was going through a lot, but as much as he could, he kept it hidden. He wanted to help all those in pain, but be known to nobody. He desired to stay hidden, out of the spotlight, but he loved everyone and did not want to ever upset anyone. Full of joy and excitement, I used to say it afterwards. "Remember my words, one day this man will be canonized a saint." Of course, I had not expected that to happen so soon, only 22 years after his repose. Many people that had benefited from the saint would come to venerate in the church he served with utter selflessness for 33 years. He stood by the ill with love for 33 years, exactly as many years as Christ lived on earth.
6. I was there, witness of Gregorios Angelinaros, philologist Samos. Footnote, he's also a writer, choir leader, music teacher, and protocantor. Sweetest Father. I was a student in Athens, keeping up with my studies in Byzantine music at the same time. A friend introduced me to St. Porphyrios, and from then on I started visiting him in Cilicia. Along with my classmates, we used to go to the liturgy on Sundays as well as to vigils on feast days. For all of us, St. Porphyrios was a sweet father who effortlessly conquered the depths of our heart. We saw an elder, very kind and discreet, filled with piety and love toward God and toward his fellow humans, but we had not perceived his gifts and the extent of his spiritual progress. After having completed further training, I did my military service in Athens, and I continued meeting the saint for about 10 years, usually in Cilicia. He had a way of drawing you to him and making you wish to express your intimate concerns. Such was the love he showed to you, that you wanted to open up to him. It was his generous grace that drew us to the monastery of St. Nicholas in Cilicia like a magnet. In cold weather or snow, we climbed the mountain, traversing part of the distance via the trail in the forest, and when we arrived, everything was beautiful. In the beginning, I did not pick the saint's words apart, neither did my classmates. Whenever he said something which I later came across, I'd deem it a chance occurrence or a coincidence. Other times, when he would mention something he could not have known under normal circumstances, I would take it as a slip of the tongue. Little by little, these coincidences multiplied, and I started to realize that he was not as absent-minded when he spoke. His words were not random, but concerned me personally. The saint watched all of us with his charisma, very discreetly, without imposing. He guided us subtly, took care of us, and protected us from the dangers of youth like a tender father. His love was not superficial, pressing, or controlling, but essential and genuine. Visions. 1. During that period, I faced a temptation which I found hard to express. It was becoming torture, and I was at a dead end. One night, there was a knock on my apartment door, and I started to see the saint. I had never mentioned my place of living, and yet he found me. What is most important is that from his first words, I understood that he knew everything. He said, among other things, quote, "What I am saying to you, you are educated. Don't you know what you have to do? Christ loves you. Why do you cause him sadness?" After this incident, the temptation ceased and I was free. Beyond doubt, he had a great gift for approaching souls. He would not shame you in the least. Every matter he handled with great kindness and discretion. He only said what was needed exactly as much as necessary for the soul to get help. 2. When we chanted in Cilicia, whoever was not a very strong singer used to recite the Apostle. One Sunday, however, I took the book and read that part myself. Right as I was about to start, I swiftly wondered, honestly, what came over you to say the Apostle as well? Mr. Costas could also say it. He usually does. Overzealous, aren't you? After the liturgy, we went to a nearby cell, as always, to have the coffee prepared for us by Cleia, the hospitable and very accommodating sister of the saint. The saint came by briefly like he usually did and then went to hear confessions from whoever he wished so. As we were leaving, he saw me off to the edge of the courtyard, and there he said to me, "Hey, today, Father," he said Father in jest, "Gregorios, you showed great zeal. The apostle, however, Mr. Costas could have recited that. In Jacob's Well, I remember one of his last liturgies before he lost his sight. It was on the Sunday of the Samaritan woman, and he came out to the nave for the Holy Gospel. Gospel of John chapter 4, verses 5 to 42. His countenance was glowing, and his voice was unfamiliar. The entire congregation was in awe by the way he chanted the extensive gospel. We were all touched. The saint appeared to have lost his connection to the present and leaned against the post of the holy doors to stay upright. After the service, we approached him and said, "Father, the gospel was so lovely today." With half-lidden eyes and a faint smile on his lips, he answered, "I was there." It was breathtaking. He had been transported to the time of Christ, to Jacob's Well, and the events unfolded before his eyes. He could see the Lord and Saint Photini. Footnote: the very Reverend Archimandrite Ananias K., during an interview on the radio station Church of Piraeus on November 19th, 2013, 2 days after the canonization, testifies the following. The saint said to me once, "Shall I tell you how Jesus spoke?" And he imitated Jesus, the Theanthropos. "How do you know, Yeronda?" I asked. "I can go over there and back here again. How? How should I know?" These people are not bound by space and time, and that was when he lived. End of footnote. Musical preferences. Calicia, he had two other frequent visitors, the priests Father Irenaeus Bulowitz, currently Metropolitan Bishop of Batska, and Father Elias Audi, current Metropolitan of Beirut, who was Lebanese and would chant in Arabic from the left choir. The saint's appearance was brilliant. It was bright and tranquil. He loved vigils and experienced them with fervor. I remember him saintly and emotional. In his recitation, he was neither slow nor hurried, neither too quiet nor loud. He never rushed. Everything was said with clarity and restraint. The saint deeply enjoyed listening to the slow Akathist hymn and chanted it frequently himself. He would say in admiration, "This chant rises from the earth and extends to reach the sky." He also enjoyed the Dynamis, the thrice holy hymn. He used to say, "The man that composed these, he's a saint," referring to Nihilus Camarados. He liked it when he chanted the selection of the lines that is usual for feast days in the plagal second mode, which is a melody in the style of the Kolavadis fathers. Kolavadiki. He knew it and said it beautifully himself. Whenever we chanted it for him, he was content. I chanted the Action Esti once from the liturgical chants by Micheleos H. in the first plagal mode, harmonized, and as I was leaving, before bidding me goodbye, he says, "Georgos, this Action Esti, too dancey. Do not sing it again." He had discernment and enlightenment for everything. He told me once, "The way you chant sounds like Athanasios K., the monk and doctor from Lavario." We held the resurrection service outside in the courtyard of the monastery, and on the lower side there was a ravine full of sycamore trees. Whenever we started chanting Christos Anesti, all the nightingales would start singing as well. The saint was deeply moved by this. Nature and monasteries. The saint loved nature very much. He wanted to wander in the countryside, climb on mountains, and hike through forests. His soul filled with euphoria then, and he recited excerpts from the Holy Book and the Book of Psalms by heart. More often than not, however, he would chant from the songs of ascent, like, "I lifted up my eyes to the mountains, whence my help shall come," as well as many others. He was also extremely fond of old monasteries and churches. Whenever he could, he would visit them. He had great piety towards Saint Dionysios of Olympus, and urged us many times to pay our respects to this monastery. Although it was far from Athens, we did go. During Great Lent, we went to Cilicia every Friday to chant the Athos hymn. It would be me, the saint, and my friend Theodores. As soon as we arrived at the monastery, the saint would start toward the church. He stood underneath the great candelabra and said just once, "Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me." In one of these instances, he turned to me and asked, "Georgos, so much praying has been done in here. Can you feel it?" "Father, I cannot." "Take it from me. Great praying has been done in here. The power of prayer does not run out. It is a power that clings on. That is why it feels one way to enter an old monastery or an old church, and another when we enter a new monastery and a new church."
7. Are you the abbess? Witness of Abbess Nectaria, the abbess of the holy monastery of the Transfiguration of the Savior, Lucus Astros K. Keep going, keep going. St. Porphyrios visited our monastery for the first time in 1973. He came accompanied by a gentleman at 11 in the morning. After venerating the main temple, he asked me, "Don't you have any chapels for me to see?" And I took him to the 2 chapels that we have, dedicated to all saints and to the Dormition of the Theotokos. At the time, I was very new at the diaconima, the duty that is of icon painting, and because I found it hard, I was considering asking the abbess to assign me something else. I had a covert strain, a miserable feeling. I had already finished one icon, the birth of Christ, and the abbess had had it placed in the prothesis in one of the chapels. When the saint entered, he venerated the icons, and when he reached the prothesis, he turned to me and said, "It is good, your icon, it's good. Keep going, keep going." That was a defining moment, because the weight left me, and afterwards I worked in the painting workshop earnestly. We begged him to eat with us. He refused and asked me where we might find wild greens to gather. I showed him, and they left. Blackouts. Because at noon we closed the entrance to our monastery, the abbess had given a rule. Each day one sister was to sit under the sycamore in the courtyard, read or pray, and keep an eye out in case anybody came. One afternoon, in 1986 or 1987, during my watch, I saw from the portcullis a frail Yeronda outside the monastery lie in a small camp bed under the shade of a pine tree. I opened the door and beckoned them inside. The 2 gentlemen accompanying the elder approached me and said, "It is Father Porphyrios." "Oh, my. And you keep him out here? Come inside." No, he said, "to respect your schedule." Explained to him that I am here for this reason. He got up, and supporting him, they brought him to the door. I prostrated and took his blessing. He asked, "Are you the abbess?" "No, elder, I am just a subordinate nun." After they entered the temple, he began asking for historical information, which I gave. At some point, he stood and stared at the square alcoves on the 4 marble columns supporting the lofty dome. Those had been extracted from a pagan temple. And he asked me, "Why were these cut out?" "We don't know. Yeronda, no information about that." "I'll tell you why. The first Christians used to put holy relics in here and then seal it to keep them hidden." We were about to exit when he said to his company, "You go on outside. Leave us monastics to talk among ourselves." And he disclosed to me 2 secret thoughts which I had wanted to express to the Eurondissa, but postponed it every time. I said to myself, "Tomorrow I will tell... ... And 6 days had gone by, and I had not divulged to anyone. As soon as the saint uncovered them, I fell prostrate, kissing his feet. I was saying, "Elder, bless me, cross me," and such.
I do not recall exactly what I said. Anything that was coming forth from my soul. He made the sign of the cross on my head, and he said to me, "May you be blessed." We went outside, and he didn't want to go to the guest house because of the stairs leading up to it. He would have had a hard time. He refused coffee when I offered to prepare it for him, and only asked for some water. I brought him a chair, and he sat in the courtyard in the shade of the sycamore. I brought out water, sweets, and refreshments. As I laid down the tray, he asks a second time, "Are you the Yorondisa?" "No, Yorondisa, I'm a simple nun." I ran to notify the abbess and the sisters. They came down in a rush, took his blessing, and all of us assembled around him. He drank the water and a little bit of orange soda. He turns his head west, towards the rocks, and says, "My, oh my, waters, 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 waters." Years later, we brought a specialist, and he confirmed the existence of water. The abbess turned to me at some point, because I was on the administrative board, and said, "Go on and ask the elder about the matoki that troubles us." We had a dependent monastery, the Matokion of St. Nicholas, high up on Mount Parnon at 850 meters, called Caria, because at an earlier time monks had come from Keries in Mount Athos and built a monastery. Since 2 male monasteries in the area had been abandoned, Theoklitos, metropolitan of Mantia, at that time had sent a council of abbots and turned them into female monasteries. Thus, while before we were 15, we were now left 9 nuns. They were elderly, and it was a burden for us. We were urging the Mother Superior to give the matoki over to the metropolis, but she declined due to the reverence for St. Nicholas. I recounted this difficulty of ours to the saint to get advice on what to do. He was silent for 5 minutes, and then he said, quote, "If you become 15 to 20 sisters, you should keep it. You have a use for it. Now, though, since you are unable, give it up." We were overjoyed, because we knew that the abbess would show obedience to the saint. Indeed, in a month's time, we had given it over to the metropolis, and today it is a male monastery. Then he said to us, "Bring an icon down to take a picture, here all together," and he pointed to a direction higher up, where the hagiography workshop was. Through his gift, he saw where we painted icons. We brought an icon of St. Spiridon, ready to be delivered. We took the picture, and then he said to his company, "Let's go now, because we have elsewhere to be." The abbess begged him to stay, but he insisted on leaving. He could not see too well, and his escorts immediately made to hold him, and he said to them, "You go on, the sister will take me." And he beckoned me over, saying to me, "Take hold of me from the right." We walked towards the exit. "Ah, I smell basil. Do you have basil plant?" "We have many, elder. We had flower beds left and right." "Cut some basil for me. May you have the aroma of Christ." I had given basil to him, which he kept under his nose, and we continued toward the exit. The abbess and the sisters were already outside the monastery. He turns and asks a third time, "Are you the Yorondisa?" "Yoronda, no. Nectaria is my name. Pray for me." Bless you. Hold me from the left side now." I thought, but I have told him I am a nun so many times, it looks like he has gaps due to his age. At the time, he was around 82 years old. We saw him off altogether, and as he was leaving, the abbess said to us, satisfied, "It was a great blessing to have Father Porphyrios come to our monastery today. A truly great blessing, this." "Yes, but he has gaps in his memory." "How could you tell?" "This, he asked me 3 times if I'm the abbess." The Yorondisa looked pointedly into my eyes, somewhat surprised, but I had no idea why. 10 or 11 years later, when I was elected Yorondisa, I realized that the saint said absolutely nothing by chance. From the moment he laid eyes on me with his great prophetic charisma, he saw my future. 8. Quarter zone, again and again. Witness of Chrissy K., Athens. for my soul. I was not a religious person in the least, and I had no connection to the church. In 1987, I heard an enthusiastic talk of an elder who was enlightened, remarkable, and so on. Out of curiosity, I decided to go and meet him to form a personal opinion. When I got to Milesi, everything was peculiar to me. Because it was my first time at a monastery, at an elder's. In the guest house, I saw many people waiting, as well as a priest. This one was saying he would ask the elder to help them have children. That one would ask to be healed of some illness, and so on. I thought that all that is not terribly important, but I did not know what to say to him either on my turn. When I came in the small cell, I kissed his hand and said to him, "Elder, everyone wants you to heal their illnesses, fix their problems, this, that. I do not ask such things. I do not want to save my body. I want to save my soul." Immediately he exclaimed loudly like a little child, and he curled up like a ball on his bed into the corner, saying repeatedly, "Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner." I felt afraid, and I thought he saw all my sins and was frightened, at the same time worried because of the shouting. His niece, Eurondas Feveronia, came in and asked me, "What did you do to him?" Nothing. I did nothing. And I went outside. As I was leaving, his niece caught up with me and said, "Mrs. Chrysula, the Eurondas said you should come up." I was baffled that they knew me by name, my nickname at that. I re-entered his cell. He made the sign of the cross. I took his blessing and left. Health problems. Later, I went to the hospital for exams, which showed I had an enlarged, swollen liver, and we needed to take a sample for a biopsy. Most probably it was cancer. I thought to ask Father Porphyrios, whom I had met a few weeks before, for advice. I went. There were many people there, and when my turn came, I said to him, "Elder, I'm unwell. The doctors want to perform a biopsy on my liver." "But, my good child, your liver, it is full of holes by now, from some medicines they gave you." "But how? I did not take any medicine." "They gave you cortisones, some kind of hormones. They gave you injections. Don't you remember it?" "I don't remember anything." "Cortisone did this, and cortisone is what they will give you again, and again, cortisone. No, you don't have cancer. Do not do anything." I took his blessing and left. I was thinking to myself, "You are mistaken, Elder. I wasn't taking pills. I had no injections." After some time, I remembered that 7 to 8 years earlier, I had indeed gone through a treatment of pills and injections. It was a weight loss treatment because I'd been overweight. I would go to a doctor's office in Piraeus every morning, and he would give me the day's pills. He would also inject me in my arm, and I would go home. I had thinned down significantly because I had lost 30 kilos in a short time span. This successful treatment was responsible for my liver problems. I understood how right St. Porphyrios was, and I was impressed. Whenever I could, I visited the saint. I would have visited daily had my responsibilities allowed it. Every few days, however, a visit to the cell felt imperative. Being by his side felt wonderful, like a relief, a warmth, only it was something superior. I had started to make confession to Father Daniel Gouvalis, and little by little my life became more settled into a spiritual order. St. Porphyrios was the core of this effort, who drew me like a magnet, and I could not go forward in my life without meeting him often. I remember him saying to me, "They will give you cortisone again and again." Indeed, years later, I live on just the cortisone. I experienced many miraculous events by his side, but my memory betrays me because of my many health issues I faced later. Dryness of the mouth and of the eyes manifested. They took a sample from my lip and sent it to England. The biopsy came back positive. I was affected by the hereditary syndrome Sjogren, a disorder of the immune system combined with rheumatoid arthritis. I have venous veins, insufficiency, circulation of the legs as well, and I tend to swell up with edema. The doctors at KAT Hospital prescribed a cortisone treatment. I take cortisone daily, and I think how right the saint was after all. How enlightened. Wondrous events. 1. I will mention a few incidents I recall from the saint. It was Pascha, and we, my husband and I, accompanied Father Daniel to the saint's cell for the father to administer the communion. The saint wished us well and gave us a red egg each. My husband ate it. I, on the other hand, kept it to this day in our icon corner, the iconostasis, as a blessing. This was my husband's first meeting with the saint, and he wanted to visit him again. We took his brother along and set off. Although I had never before talked to the saint about my husband and his job, he said to us, "I know what you do. You cut cars, and these cars have blood on them." My husband took wrecked cars, cut them apart, disassembled them, and gathered the parts. He would go to Germany to buy stock, taking me along as well sometimes. Then the saint added in jest, "You know what? You should take me to Germany too once." Turning to my brother-in-law, he said, "Your work in aviation, you are in the control tower." And he asked various questions. We left exhilarated by the saint's revelations. 2. The brother of my sister-in-law was about to travel to England to get heart surgery. He would have a quintuple bypass, and they asked me to take him to the saint. When we entered, he said, "Yes, go to England. You will have the surgery and have no fear. You will return safely. Nothing will happen to you. From your heart, nothing will happen. Something else will be your end, not this." It happened just so. He went to England, and the surgery was a great success. Years later, an Albanian man entered his shop, and after a quarrel, hit him on the head with a piece of wood. He died on the spot. 3. One day a friend that lived in the proximity of the monastery called and said, Come, the elder asks for you." When I went, he said, "In a few days, 60 children from Yugoslavia will come here, and we will host them. We don't have sheets, however, nor blankets, nor pillows. We have nothing. See to it." I went without a cent in my pocket. A merchant came to mind who I had met when I got married. I went to him, saying, "Mr. Demetrius, this is the situation. I need 60 sheets, 60 covers, 60 blankets, 60 pillows, and 60 pillowcases. Don't fret, I'll deliver them to the monastery." Another time the saint told me on the phone, "In Yugoslavia they have no shoes. See to it." I remembered some friends of mine who owned shoe shops, and they gave me the stock that was out of trend. Then I went to a well-known factory, and I asked for all that they could give. They gladly offered many boxes of shoes, and we sent them to Yugoslavia. Yet another time I was told by the abbess Porphyria that the saint wanted me to change the tires on their car. Not knowing where to go, I went to a shop owner acquainted with my husband. Immediately, they offered to change the tires for free. More events similar to these happened to me, and a feeling surprised myself where had the courage come from to knock on strangers' doors and to ask for help. Those people did not know the saint, and yet without hesitating, they facilitated me. They did not object to any of his requests. I would take his blessing and go on my way, knowing there would be no hurdles. The saint did all that, in essence, through the strength of his prayer, and these people had been prepared to help me out. I was just a messenger. 4. I heard the following awe-inspiring incident from a friend's husband, a couple living near the monastery. They went on a trip with the saint. They drove up a hill toward the little church on the top. Part of the road was obstructed by overgrown vegetation, so they would have to continue on foot on a trail. The saint asked him to keep driving toward the church, but he informed him it was impossible. There were brambles and bushes in front of them. The saint repeated he should go on, and he obeyed and started the engine. Then the car lifted off the ground, and flying, it stopped right in front of the church. They read the Vespers and left in the same way. The car flew over the vegetation and descended on the road. The driver was at a loss. He was dumbfounded. When eventually he was able, he asked the saint how this event happened, but he did not wish to comment on it. 5. 2 women visited the saint late in the afternoon and waited for their turn to see him. Anna, a girl helping the saint, approached them and said, "The saint said you are coming from far and you have not eaten because you were working at the factory all day long. Come, because I have prepared something for you to eat, and then, as per the saint's instructions, I will take you to his cell to see him." 6. I met the abbess Porphyria one time when I visited the monastery. There was no line, so I said to her, "I'm going to the elder's cell. He's not there." "What do you mean? Where did he go?" "His body is present, but his spirit is not." She confided this in me then. "The elder during prayer departs. He told me he was going to Romania, to Father Cleopas Ili. He often goes to Essex in England, to Father Sophronius, and they converse spiritually. Farewell." The monastery called one morning. Come, the elder asks for you because he departs for Mount Athos today, and he will not return. Come and take his blessing." Immediately, I took a friendly couple with me, and we went. Moved, I took his blessing. He wished me well, made the sign of the cross, and I bid him goodbye. The husband of the couple, Mr. Lazaros, he kept him in the cell for half an hour, giving advice to him. Because they had goats, rabbits, chickens, and grew vegetables, he was instructing him how to care for them. In particular, he said, among other things, "Never kill your animals. Keep them and build one more pen, because difficult years are coming. Difficult days will come, so keep them to have your own meat and milk. Afterwards, God will provide. These difficult years will not be long. Better days will come, a better life, and you will have an easy time." Nowadays, with all the health problems burdening me and some people in my close family, I am certain I would not have made it had I not met the saint. I feel his presence, his help, and his love in my everyday struggle. The saint loved everyone, all people, and he prayed a lot. He saw the strangers as brothers. He wanted all of us to be as one, and altogether united with Jesus Christ. The secret of spiritual life lies in our unity with our fellow man. He would often say the words from the prayer of the Lord, that they may be one. 9. An exquisite sight, witness of Hieromonk Photius, the elder of the Holy Monastery of the Holy Trinity, Porphyrios, satellite of the Holy Monastery of the Great Lavra Mount Athos. I initially met St. Porphyrios as an ascetic in Cilicia and Penteli. Specifically, one time, he led the Sunday service in the monastery of St. Nicholas, together with 2 Serbian hieromonks. One of them was Father Amphilochius, and the other was Father Irenaeus. Both became bishops in Serbia later. St. Porphyrios was standing in front of the altar. On his left and right stood the 2 Serbians, holding prayer robes with 300 beads. The saint was glowing, literally immersed in light, and his feet did not touch the ground. It was an exquisite sight that will never leave my memory. The second time I met him was in Milesi, in the trailer where he resided, while the holy monastery of the Transfiguration of the Savior was being built. I had a very serious problem then, and I did not know what to do. I visited him for advice. He held on to my wrist, measured my pulse, remained silent for a while, and his response afterwards brought me peace. I gained a lot of courage and strength inside. Everything he said exactly came to be true in my life. I met him a third time in his cell, in the newly founded monastery. He was blind and lying down, bedridden due to the illness and old age. Still, he comforted me with just a few words and gave me his blessing. I kissed his hand and a wooden cross he held in reverence. Since then, I never met him again. His appearance and his comforting and prophetic words are always with me. 10. Unrepentant? witness of Mr. Gorgos de Mala, merchant, Xylocastro. In the winter of 1990, on a freezing day, my brother and I visited the saint. Entering the cell, I saw the saint lying down, very sick. Inching closer, I took his blessing and meant to speak with him about my brother, who at the moment stood back. Before I had the chance, under his breath, so that my brother did not hear, he said, distressed, "Why would you bring this one here?" I was ashamed. I froze. He knew everything. We left. I did not talk to him about my brother's health issue. He had malignant cancer of the neck and knew that he would die soon. My brother had squandered his life away in sin. He had become involved with a large group of men, all of them unmarried, and they led a dissolute life. He was blasphemous and, despite approaching the brink of death, showed no sign of repenting. My brother died 15 months after that visit. I pray that in his last days, be it just internally even, that he grasped the truth of his sinfulness and repented. May the Lord, just, but also merciful and gracious, take pity upon him and have mercy on his poor soul. Pray for him. 11. I thought, and he answered, witness of Lambrini Becri, Piraeus. Will I have a child? I come from the village Kappa in Karditsa, but lived at the time with my husband Demetrius in Corinth. After 6 years of married life, we had not yet managed to have children. We had made various attempts with no result, however, and we felt fraught and upset. One day our best woman, Katharina, told us about some student acquaintances of hers who met St. Paisios in Mount Athos, and he had urged them thus, "Why come all this distance to see me when you have St. Porphyrios in Athens?" And so we decided to go and talk to St. Porphyrios about our problem. It was the winter day of 1981, when along with Katharina and other relatives we started towards Milesi. We lost our way, however. When, after the ordeal, we finally found the saint's cell, it was dark and we returned unsuccessful. In May, together with my husband, we went back using public transportation. We were glad to see that there was nobody else outside his cell, and so we went a little away from it, waiting without disturbing him. I felt anxious, thinking about what he might say to me. After a while, the saint came out. He looked at us and left the other way at a brisk pace, toward a newly planted forest of various fruit trees. Turning to my husband, I said, "Hey, the elder, let's catch up with him." "Don't you see how fast he is walking? He saw us and is leaving. He does not want us. Who knows what we look like to him? We must look despicable." It was, of course, impossible for the saint to listen to our conversation. Yet at the same moment he turned to us and shouted, "Come here, you!" As soon as we were by his side, he took us by the hand, one on his right, the other on his left. And as we were strolling in the forest, he said to us, "One feels bad and says so, the other feels bad and says nothing." Truly that was the case. I was the one speaking up about being upset, while Demetrius, although sad, kept it hidden. He went about joyfully showing us the young trees, at the roots of which he had planted pumpkins, and all around each tree he had fitted a plastic sheet to retain moisture from whenever he wanted them near the root, due to drought. I was plagued by our issue, and gaining courage I asked him, "Elder, am I going to have a child?" "You will. Look here now, look what happened." And at the same time he was pointing to the small pumpkins near the tree trunks, full of excitement. "Elder, will I have a child?" There they are. There they are." His hand was pointing to my belly. With vibrancy and excitement, he kept showing us around his garden. He smiled as if he was seeing it for the first time. So familiar, spontaneous, unassuming, and joyful he was, resembling a small child. He knew how burdened we were and said, "You are pushing not to have children." He is not saying it right. He has it wrong, I thought, and immediately he turned to me and said, "Did you get what I said? Did you get it? You are pushing not to have children." The elder said the wrong thing again because the exact opposite is happening to us. All day long we wonder how we can have a child. I thought, but the elder knew my thoughts and started telling this story to us. I was at my sister's once and sitting near the window, I could see a small child playing with its toys on the ground. At some point, it stuck its finger in a little bottle that was lying around and started crying because it could not get it out. After a while, however, it forgot about the bottle. It stopped crying and resumed playing with its toys. Then the bottle fell off its finger on its own with no effort. The saint meant to tell us that we should relax in order to have a child, but at the time we did not fully understand. He said to my husband afterwards, "Mr. Demetrius, go a little farther. Let me say something to your wife." Then he turned to me and said, "You are not a good Christian, only in name. Make sure you go to Father Nectarios where your husband goes to confess. Study the Holy Book. Go to church every Sunday. Fast and receive communion. Do 40 prostrations each day." Indeed, at the time I was seeing a different confessor. Returning to Corinth, I asked Father Nectarios if they are acquainted, and he responded negatively. All that the saint had said came from his charisma of clairvoyance and foresight. We had been unable to let up and trust in him because we did not comprehend the extent of his holiness. When he laid out the spiritual schedule that I was to follow, I thought of my husband and said, "Elder, my husband will object." "Don't mind him. You will do as I say. You will get a job too. You will not sit around." Since I enjoyed sewing on my own, I found material and started filling in orders with my sewing machine. I mainly made shirts, and my clients wanted me to deliver them sooner and sooner. It did not take long before I became completely absorbed by my work. Also, he said to me the following surprising thing: "Don't go back to the old woman because she will harm you." If I don't get pregnant, I will go again, I thought. "Did you hear me?" he asked sternly. If I'm not able to conceive, I will go. Only my husband must not know you have forbidden it, because he will stop me from going. I thought to myself again. He immediately turned to my husband and shouted to him, "Come here, Demetrius. Don't let this one here go back to the old woman in Ceres, because harm will come from her." I'm saying it once again. You will have children, not only one child. I was not able at the time to comprehend how he can instantly know what's in my mind and then respond, how he can be privy to my whole past. It was true, I had visited an old woman in Ceres, who would supposedly help women conceive with practical means. I believed her then because for a cousin of mine, she had found the exact number of abortions she had done and that she would not be with child again. To me, she had said that I will get pregnant and made me happy. She had taken a linen strip and bound it underneath my belly. Seeing my wariness at his words, the saint revealed more about my past. He bent down, picked up a stick, and drawing something like a geographical map on the ground, he said, "This here is your village, Kappa and Karditsa. There's a lot of water there. Here. What lies here, however, underneath the earth? I don't recall. There is running water here. I can see lots of water and underneath caverns." Yes, elder, there are caverns. I know them. How can you know? They are hidden underground. When I was little, because the village had no water, they dug around a spring to draw the water higher into a big reservoirs to supply water for the whole village. They stumbled upon the caverns while digging. The saint pointed near the place with the stick and asked, "There's a cross here. What is it?" "I don't know. Nothing comes to mind." "It could be a cemetery, no? Or a church. Go on, think." No. Had it been one of those, I would have known." He knew what it was, naturally, but insisted that I remember it as well. Finally, memories resurfaced of stories from my grandparents and the village elders about the martyrdom of St. Constantine of Capua. Footnote: St. Constantinos was the son of a Turkish officer in the city of Kapu in Thessaly during the Turkish occupation in the year 1610. He loved Christ, was catechized, and strengthened in his faith by 3 monastics of the holy monastery of St. Nicholas. Siam was baptized and took the name Konstantinos, while the monks fled to Meteora to escape the wrath of Pasa, who set the monasteries on fire. When the saint resisted his father's pressure to renounce his faith, he was led to a dark dungeon and submitted to harsh torments. Then he was led underneath a sycamore tree. the spot indicated by St. Porphyrios in the village of Kappa, where they attempted to hang him. All the villagers gathered and saw him being hanged 3 times, and each time, by some miracle, the rope was cut. Furious, the Pasa grabbed a sword and beheaded his own son. Everyone saw a beautiful bright light descend like a column from the sky on his martyred body. His holy soul flew to Christ. He was martyred on August 18th and was buried nearby the Christians. Recently, he was canonized as saint, and a temple in his honor was built outside the village. To return to the text. Finally, memories resurfaced of stories from my grandparents and the village elders about the martyrdom of St. Constantine of Capoue, which happened approximately where St. Porphyrios pointed out. What the saint was seeing was the cross, meaning the martyrdom of St. Constantine under the Ottoman yoke. Then he looked at my husband and exclaimed, "See, I know your village." Despite the saint's revelations internally, I still struggled with doubt, so I asked the same agonizing question, "Yerondo, will I have a child?" "I want you to tell me the names of your brothers from eldest to youngest." The saint was patiently looking at me, his countenance peaceful and bright. When I started going through the names, he faced my husband, and at each name he unfurled one finger of his extended arm. I was saying, "Theophanes, Photini, Constantinos." "Up to here, you have enough," he said, interrupting me. "Elder, I have not mentioned everyone." "Go on, leave now. This many are enough." He then untied the thin rope tethering 2 young goats and let them go. We received his blessing and went on our way. My husband confided in me on the way back that the saint's face appeared luminescent to him, especially at the moment he said excitedly, "See, I know your village." His eyes were glowing. This had made a great impression on him. 2 years later, we had our first child, and later we had 2 more, 3 in all. As many as the fingers held out by the saint when he said, "This many are enough." After this, we were deeply grateful to the saint, who embosomed within us such patience and love. Wondrous events. 1. Along with a relative of mine, we visited the saint plenty of times. Waiting outside his cell once, we saw a girl approaching in inappropriate clothing, and the saint exiting the forest briskly to catch up with her. They stood there for a bit and conversed. The saint went back into the forest, and the girl left. The people waiting for the saint were disgruntled because they expected the saint to be inside his cell to receive them after a certain time. They were also ruffled because he would rather meet with a girl wearing short pants. We followed and caught up with her further down the road. She was overjoyed and told us that as she was walking the long distance to the cell, she prayed a lot and wholeheartedly begged for God's help so that the elder would receive her. The saint made revelations and addressed all her questions. The saint made no discrimination, but with his gift knew who was truly in need and made sure to help them. 2. Another time, waiting for our turn, we noticed a lady who had no patience. With devious purpose, she started conversations with people ahead of her and moved along the queue, aiming to enter the cell sooner with no respect for others. When she entered the cell, the saint immediately sent her away, and she reassumed her first position, only to repeat the same tactic soon after. She again attempted to proceed quicker, but the saint saw her actions through his gift and did not receive her. Humiliated, once more she returned to her place, and we understood that nothing went past the saint. 3. An acquaintance of mine went to the saint once along with her children. The saint saw each child separately, and in the end, she went inside herself. He revealed to her that one of her children was going to become a priest, and a good one at that. Leaving the cell and meeting up with her children, she heard from just one of them that the saint, after embracing it, held its head and made the sign of the cross on him with both hands, giving many blessings. Indeed, growing up, the child became a servant of the Almighty. 4. Yet another time, a group entered this cell, but they came back out immediately. The saint had informed them that a priest was to arrive soon, and they were to let him know. He should go on inside because he is expected. Truly, 3 minutes later, a priest arrived, and when they informed him, he was bewildered since he had not sent word to anyone beforehand. 5. I visited with a relative once who lives an intensely spiritual life, and we found 30 to 40 people waiting for their turn. I was a bit further toward the front when the door opened and the saint appeared. He crossed the crowd and headed toward my relative. He started asking various things, and in the end suggested she return a different time because he could not see her on that day. He informed the crowd as well that he could not see anyone. He went back inside and the crowd dispersed. We went back to the little wood and waited. Shortly the saint came outside again and walked straight to us. He gazed at my relative intensely and repeated his request. I want you to come again. I'll wait for you. I cannot today. I felt scorned and thought, what is this? I'm sitting right beside her. Can't he see me? At that instant, turning to me, he said, You too, come as well. A doctor approached then to speak with him, but he refused, saying, Not now, I can't help you. He would say that he does not always have this charisma. I think that on that day his gift was not working as intensely as other times. An acquaintance visited him once, and the saint said to him, Leave and come back another time, because the grace is not with me today. 12. Augustinos Kafsokalivitis, witness of Hieromonk Laurentios Grazas Florina. Mutual respect. His Eminence, Metropolitan of Florina, Mr. Augustinos Kafsokalivitis, faced in 1986 a serious problem with his gallbladder. He was in pain and in need of an operation. We were very anxious because he was 80 years old and we doubted whether he was strong enough for surgery. One day the phone rang. It was St. Porphyrios. We exchanged greetings and he asked, Is the elder having the surgery? Pray, elder. It's tough because he's old and we're afraid. We have not made the decision yet. In the end, with the saint's prayer, the operation was successful beyond expectation. The late theologian and philologist, Mr. Nicholas S., conveyed the following from a conversation with the saint. Anything that happens in the church, Father Augustinos feels on his person, in his body and soul. That is to say, if something agreeable and good happens to the church, Father Augustinos feels that joy on himself. If not, he feels as if he is faced by the adversity, and he suffers. The Most Reverend Augustinos held the saint in high esteem and spoke of him with respect because he had discerned his gifts and his holiness. For a time he had served at the saint's place of origin as well in the metropolis of Karatia. Augustinos said to N. Sotiropoulos once, Elder Porphyrios' manner of death in humility, avoiding honors, is the foremost proof of the holiness of this man. At the Parliament. During one of his speeches, the Most Reverend Augustinos said the following. When I was in the Synod in September, when the Parliament starts congregating, they said to me, You are a member of the Synod. You ought to come as well. For the agismos, the blessing with water of the Hellenic Parliament. The Archbishop will be in attendance. The members of the Synod, you cannot be the exception. I will come, not on my own, however. I will bring someone with me. Who will you bring? Porphyrios. I will bring Father Porphyrios for you. What is this monk's involvement with you? He has a great mission. What kind of mission? I will get up and preach briefly, and then it will be Porphyrios' turn. I will say to them, Oh, Parliament of the Greeks, what is your name? And I will answer, Legion. All the devils have gathered in the Parliament, the demon of adultery, the demon of fornication, the demon of atheism, the demon of faithlessness. All evil sprouts from there. In consequence, since it is such a legion of demons, it has no use for an agismos. It needs an exorcism. Because I am a man of sin, I will call Father Porphyrios. Come, Porphyrios, take out your cross and exorcise them all. If you're going to If you're going to come like that, you'll be called a lunatic once again. 1,000 times better that, because they do this in ridicule. They believe in nothing and mock everything. Father Porphyrios will raise the cross and exorcise the demons nesting in the heart of Greece. We will become worldwide news. 13. Let the wind blow on your face. Witness of Mrs. D.F. Athens. Do not study. I visited the saint for the first time at a young age. He lived in his bare hut in the midst of a sprawling field. I found it unbelievable how someone could live in this shack. He was not attractive. He was slight and sickly, and his appearance did not spark any interest, and yet, when you were near him, your soul became flooded with something novel. You were in awe and perceived something exceptional happening inside you. On that occasion, we went for a stroll in the forest, along with the saint, and Father Daniel Gouvalis and my mother, discussing all the while. When I returned with my parents at 16 years of age, he was living in the monastery grounds. We found approximately 150 people waiting for their turn. I recall something powerful and novel, as if someone was leaning near my ear and said, "Why did you come? He will scold you for your sins. Leave. He will know all your transgressions. Have you no shame?" And other such things. Their source was the wicked, of course, who aimed to send me away from the saint. It was the summer of 1985, and I remember the elder lying down, blind, with his hands wrapped in cloth because he suffered from sores and wounds. He was struggling to sit upright on the bed and exchange a few words with the people. I was a good student at a school with many expectations. I studied a lot. I said to him, "Elder, I am starting my final year and I'm interested in these universities. I ask for your blessings." I was used to and expecting well wishes, like good luck, etc., but he caught me off guard. "Don't study. Do you hear? Don't study." He began describing my family home. "It's like this, and there are woods across from it with many trees and fresh air. It is very nice. You should take your mother and walk around. Walk around. Let the wind blow on your face. Understand? Don't study." I was speechless because I expected to hear the opposite. The school year started and I eagerly started studying. I would return from school, eat in a hurry to have more time to study. I was attending evening classes, preparatory school for math, physics, and chemistry, and I spent all my time solving mathematical problems. When I went back, he repeated emphatically, "Don't study, you should stroll in the trees, have the wind hit you on your face." I was silently wondering, how am I going to pass if I don't study? Fine, he's a holy man. At times, though, maybe he does not speak for God, but as a human. I did go out now and then, but I wanted to do as I liked. The teachers rewarded me. They told me that I was on the right course, and that made me happy because I could see that I had covered the prescribed material. In February, 3 months before the exams, the first headaches occurred, and they grew stronger as the time passed. It reached the point where I could not study at all due to the pain, and my memory retained nothing I read. The teachers were at a loss why I could not remember recently taught exercises. I had forgotten all that I had already learned. It was like seeing it for the first time. I was fatigued mentally. I began taking walks and resting, but I was strong-willed as well. I believed I ought to try harder for my mind to retain what it learned. Thus I got stuck in a never-ending cycle with no one to understand. I would tell my parents it is beyond my powers, and they in a manner would put pressure on me to continue, saying I should try to dispel my nerves and then all would turn out well. You will become a teacher. During the Panhellenic exams, I would call the saint at 6 a.m. and say, "Elder, I am D. I have this exam today. Your blessing, and pray for me, please." I pray. I would not say any more because I believed he understood who I was. Other times I would say, "Elder, make the sign of the cross. I am my child, and I pray for you." With all the disobedience, the anxiety, and the mental fog, had I not had the elder, I would not have been accepted to any universities. Everyone expected me to get into the top ones, but I got into TEI in Athens. Devastated and scolded by my father, I went to the elder. Seeing me upset, he said, "This university, the TEI, is really very good. You should attend. It is interesting and it suits you. Go." My father wanted me to be a mathematician, physicist, chemist, or architect, and he insisted I should take the exams again, misjudging how exhausted I was emotionally. When we went to the elder, he started pressuring him that I should try again, and the elder reproached him, "Do not push her. The university is very good. She should finish it." Turning to me, he added, "Finish it, and one day you will become what you want." And so I enrolled in a university and with no connection to my dreams. Many years passed, and a law was voted asking for teachers with my specialization for schools of technical education. I participated in an examination and became a teacher in secondary education. We all rejoiced then and remembered the saint's prophecy. Something happened after all those years that had seemed so far outside our horizon of expectations. It took 1 whole year for me to overcome the mental fatigue and feel like myself again. How right the saint was, because my university was both to my liking and suitable for me. Counsel. 1. I remember ducking into his cell often, wondering, what is the saint going to see in me? "Let me see then, girl, do you love Christ?" "Ah, yes, you do, a lot." Other times he would say, "I know you. Do you realize it?" "Yes, elder, I feel that you know me. You know my troubles, my anxieties, and all that." "I can see in the depths of your soul. Do you know it?" "Yes, elder, I know it well." "Don't be upset, silly, do you hear? Don't feel upset because you will grow old quicker," he added with a spark. I was a sensitive person. The saint knew and foresaw everything, a modern-day prophet. Since a young age I got gray hairs, and seeing them reminded me of his words. Whenever I visited with my parents, he would say to my father, "Don't pressure her. Here, say nothing to her. Let her be. She knows best. Ask her. She knows." 2. When I was in university, he said to me, "Study the Word of God." "What do you mean, elder, the Word of God?" "It is the Holy Book, the Old and New Testament, and the lives of the saints, and have put into practice the sayings, who have put into practice the sayings of the Holy Book. I read many religious books at the time, not the ones the elder talked about, though, which came before every other. The elder saw that and helped me immensely. For years I taught Sunday school for children in various areas in Athens, so he told me, "Have you any idea how much your readings have helped you? You read to pass it on to the children, and the words stay with you. Do you know the strength you have gained? They're powerful words." 3. I was haunted by unusual thoughts, which I strived to dispel for days, certain that they came from the devil. This occurred some more times, and after I was free of this war, I visited the saint. To the people sitting in his cell, he looked to each of us and gave counsel separately, in a way that the rest did not understand the matter at hand. The person for whom the advice was given, however, got the meaning of it and the help they needed. To me, he said that my thoughts of late had not been the work of who I thought, meaning the devil, but the result of stress and great pressure. At the same time, those thoughts were a defense mechanism for my body and soul, a means to gain relief and decompress. 4. Another time he said, "Hey, you're not bad really, it's just, well, you don't let anything go." They said it to me like that. Why did they say it like that? How did they say it? Why did they say it? Why did they look at me weird? Meaning, I occupied myself with trivialities, and I would lose my soul through that. I remembered this later whenever I would have had these kinds of thoughts, and I promptly sent them away, fearing I'd develop a judgmental spirit. 5. Yet another time in his cell, he was sharing about the many people that called him with their troubles when the phone rang. It was on speakerphone, so I heard his talk with a man from South Africa. He recounted the substantial issue with one of his many children. Such strength. Every time I visited, I bowed down, and he made the sign of the cross on me with a wooden cross without touching me. Something strange would happen then wonderful also. I felt as if a cross was being engraved on me by iron, and a numbness spread in me that lasted for hours and gave me fortitude. For a part of that day I sensed the blessing inside me vividly. This mark went deep, bringing vitality and strength, but eventually I would lose it. Near the end, the nuns did not allow us to speak with him. We could see that the saint wanted to and struggled to say something to us despite his suffering. We asked only for his blessing then and left. I remember always leaving his cell stronger, even if we hadn't spoken. The place, his holy cell, and the feeling that I had received a saint's blessing made me feel like I could fly. 14. One of a kind. Witness of Monk Gabriel, elder of the holy cell of St. Christodoulos, of the holy monastery of Kutlumusio, Mount Athos. His virtues. I visited St. Porphyrios in Milesi twice, and we talked extensively. Acquaintances of mine have recounted to me some of the following from visits to the saint while he was alive. 1. The saint is a model of perfect obedience. He had 2 elders and obeyed both blindly. One elder would say, "Dig here," and he dug. The other came to him and said, "Leave that and dig over there." He said nothing, only went straight to the place indicated by the second. The first came back and scolded him. "What did I say? Why are you digging here? Go over there." He did not speak. He went. Perfect obedience, not just forbearing, joyful as well. 2. He had said lovingly to one of his visitors, "The truth of this matter is this: be obedient, my child." "No, elder, that's not how it is, for this and this reason." "My child, it is like I say. Show me some obedience." "No, elder, science has clearly shown that's not how it is. See here stubbornness, egoism, willfulness, and reaction toward the saint when he himself said not even one word back to his elders who put him through so many tests." 3. In private, the saint had said to the abbess of a big female monastery, "You have egoism. Watch out, because there is egoism lurking." She was angered and commanded no Athonite elder to ever be allowed entrance to the monastery again. He gave advice out of love, and instead of humility, she showed stubbornness. 4. Father Akakios Pocomian from the Gregorian holy cell of Saints Anna Gregorio would commute to Athens until 1952 to sell their handiwork, undershirts, knitwear, underpants, etc. He ran into the saint near Ammonia Square and reprimanded him. "Why are you acting like this?" An Athonite monk, meandering among the people, among women. "Yes, Father Akakios, you are right. Keep telling me. Pray that I go back." The saint did not become angry, did not react at all. He humbled himself. 5. He wanted to depart from St. Nicholas in Cilicia once to go to the tonsure of one of his spiritual children. He left, but then fell ill and nauseous. His sister, Charvikelia, passed with the donkey loaded with provisions, and he asked her what he should do, go or stay. She did not press him. She said, "Do as God tells you." With all his charismata, he asked others what to do. A truly humble disposition. 6. Yet another time, even though he was over 80 years old, he was building something outside the monastery, and a layman, Mr. Apostolis, asked him, "Pray tell me, Yeronda, 80 years old, both feet in the grave, and you're still working?" Leaving this life, we ought to leave something behind for others to find. We shouldn't leave fruitless. Someone plants a walnut tree, and it will bear fruit years later. Too late for me, but the next person will eat from them. This was the saint's spirit, a spirit of diligence, offering, and Philadelphia, and love, that is, brotherly love. 7. A layman was visiting the saint when a group of girls arrived and appropriately dressed. They talked with him for some time and left. He was scandalized by what he saw, so the saint told him, "Myself, blessed man, I work in a different way. I want to convince them to love Jesus Christ, and little by little they will change. I do not control them. My strategy is different because the words Don't wear makeup. Don't dress this way. Don't do that. Don't do this. Do not help them to become better. The saint had great sensibility. Gifts and teachings. 1. A Greek farm owner learned about the saint while he was visiting from America. He went to him and asked, "Elder, I have no water. Do you know by any chance if there is water on my farm in America? This many meters to the west of your house. The water is there. Dig there and it'll come out." "Ah, Elder, is it good though? Who knows? Maybe it has microorganisms." "Hold on, let me try." "Ah, it is really good." 2. The Athonite monks of the holy monastery Grigoriou visited the saint several times. They asked once, "Elder, we wish to hear from you about mental prayer." "Leave mental prayers alone now. Pick up a garden hoe, some picks, and dig." He said that because self-importance is a monk's greatest evil. They ought to work, to toil, and after the labor, mental prayer follows. Father Ephrem Katanakiotis is, for me, the most significant theorist in matters of obedience. He visited the holy monastery of Vatopedi once, and the Athonites asked him, "Speak to us, Elder, about mental prayer." To us, Elder Joseph the Hesychist spoke not of mental prayer, but of obedience. Out of obedience, meaning humility, prayer will come. 3. A layman was speaking to the saint when someone gave a list of names for the saint to include in his prayers. The saint said he would, but did not write anything down. Another one showed up minutes later, and the same thing happened. After a few times of this happening, the layman was affronted and insolently asked, "Elder, are you toying with the people, fooling them? They gave you so many names to commemorate, and you haven't written down any. How are you going to remember them? Come now, God needs paper and pens? If I say, 'Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on all those people that asked for my prayer,' does God not know them?" And a footnote, the following is from a lengthy prayer included in St. Basil the Great's Divine Liturgy. "Remember, O God, all those who have not remembered through ignorance, forgetfulness, or because of their multitude, since you know the name and age of each, even from their mother's womb." To return to the text, 4. He held the Orthodox spirit. He did not subscribe to ecumenism. "There is one church. Don't mention papism to me. There is one church, the Orthodox Church. They don't have mysteries, the grace of God." St. Porphyrios is unique, gifted by God's grace. In his cell in Milesi, he lived humbly. He had a stove made of bricks and a telephone to communicate with his spiritual children and those who needed him. He tamed parrots. He cooked. He did not let people realize how hard he tried physically and mentally by fasting, praying, prostrations, fighting spiritual struggles. This is why God gifted him with grace.